Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the magical land of the pod. As Caleb was just referencing it before we went live, otherwise known as the football experience. Caleb, there is news in the manager merry-go-round. I thought we'd start with that, get it out of the way, and I think you had the same thoughts as even as myself regarding good old Frankie, because even when they showed him like here, like just that little go away from the how they show people in the stands like, oh, who's come to watch the game, and then they showed Frank, and it's like, I'm just like, don't tell me they're thinking about this, like, or are they just like, and then I'm just like, well, it's a big game, like it's Liverpool Chelsea, like that was a big rivalry back when Frank played. I was like, I sort of dismissed it, but I guess it was planted in the back of my mind that it was a possibility. But at the same time, I was like, well, why can't former players or former managers go to, especially the big games? Like if this was a smaller game like Chelsea, Nottingham Forest or something like that, then I'd be like, yeah, okay, this is a little bit weird. Like I wouldn't necessarily go to that game by choice, but Liverpool Chelsea, I'd go to that game. Like I'd try to intently go to that game. So yeah,
well, you kind of
take it
kind
away.
of think with former players, like if they're at a random game, they might be being honoured in some way, some like at halftime or something like that. So you don't make much of that. But what I did make more of with the when they cut to Lampard was, I think the game was like at the 80th minute, and he was still sort of sat forward and just sort of like actually watching the game, and I was just like, that's odd. Because like I think if you're a former player, you've been around football your whole life. If you go into a game and you're not really invested, you'll tune out, especially this game as well. You'll tune out after 20 minutes, if that. I'm being maybe generous to this game, but yeah. And then when I saw him, I guess 80th minute, and he's invested in the game, I'm like, this makes sense, doesn't it? Frank's not doing anything. Club legend, might get the fans a little bit back on side, if not like definitely not toxically offside. So I guess for what they need, they've kind of downgraded, haven't they? They used to rely on Gus Hiddink as the crutch, and now they're turning to Frank Lampard as the manager. So the manager, not the player, but
Yeah,
the manager merry-go-round.
it's a little bit of a weird one, but like at the same time, if you think about it, has most of the squad that he had actually sort of like left, or at least the players that he I guess that fell out of favor with him. Like for instance, Rudiger comes straight to mind. I think was it Alonso as well? They fell out of
Yeah,
favor.
he's got a few who are still there, but a fair few have moved on as well.
Yeah,
You think
so
Havertz would have worked with him, Mount, obviously Kante,
mm,
yeah, all those. Reece James, I guess, would have been there as well.
yeah, so I think
So I don't
the
know.
players that are
It
there,
makes, yeah,
like they have his favor or he has their favor.
yeah, I guess so. But I don't know how much confidence is Frank Lampard, who was sacked from Everton earlier this season, gonna instill in these players who are
That makes it even
come
more
to the
weird.
club. Yeah, exactly. This season's been crazy because I think the thing that was doing the rounds was, I don't know if even you told me this as well, but the Conte Tuchel handshake incident was this the start of this season, and it's just like, no, it wasn't. That was like years ago.
It feels like years ago.
Exactly. So it just puts this wacky season into perspective, and I guess all bets are off when you think it's this season, and you think it's Chelsea as well with the ownership group that they have kind of running it a bit like a circus at the moment. But I don't know. It's not all doom and gloom for me for Chelsea. The season might be a write-off, but when I look at their squad and I look at who's playing in that team, I think they are very close to. I wouldn't put a title challenge past them next season, to be quite honest. I think they have that much quality within the team and and the squad as well. They have such a huge squad if they just trim it. I guess if they get the right guy, but it depends. It depends as well what the circus does above and who they appoint. And I don't know, the Chelsea fans. I don't know, the whole Potter thing left me a bit cold on the takes and stuff, and how the Chelsea fans reacted to that. I thought it was honestly, I don't. That's a little bit sacrilegious, but I don't think there was all that much difference between Potter and Tuchel. I think there was a difference, and I know Tuchel delivered a European Cup, and I know the fans were on side, but I think if Potter had the fans on side, I think things probably could have panned out very similarly, to be quite honest. I think they still had much the same squad, much the same philosophies. They landed on the same formation at the end, both of them. And I don't know, it's just that whole charisma thing that I think was overblown because the atmosphere got toxic. But I don't know, the bigger point for me on the whole manager thing, because I guess we've saturated all the talk about the managers, but the point I wanted to make was all of these teams who have changed their manager, the big takeaway for me is the most important thing is on the pitch and the players that you have on the pitch. So if I look at three examples like Tottenham, like Bayern, and like Chelsea straight away, what's the personnel problem for Chelsea?
Just up front.
Up front, no striker, no goals. They can't score, and they've had what was it, 38 shots or something in the last two games, and 6 big chances, and that Kovacic miss, your boys miss against Liverpool.
Hey, he's a midfielder, all right? Cut him some slack.
Yeah. But this is what Chelsea are doing, and we can see straight away what the problem is. And Bayern, I mean, you could probably point at both ends of the pitch, to be quite honest. And they get knocked out in the midweek in the cup against Freiburg, and I'm kind of regretting maybe being so bold with saying Dortmund can't win the league, although they were pretty terrible away at Leipzig as well. But I don't know, but I forgot who I was talking about on the other side, and Bayern still have their frailties because of playing personnel, not because of the manager's change. I'm sure Tuchel might have a positive effect, probably will. It definitely gives everyone more confidence that he can go head-to-head with Pep rather than Nagelsmann. There's no doubt about that. So, but this is what I'm saying. It's just perceptions around managers. I just think managers are... And Tottenham, I'm sure we've already said it, but no Alderweireld and Vertonghen at the back. And that was the bedrock of everything they did well under Pochettino. And it's no surprise that Mourinho and Conte couldn't get it to work when those guys were either on the decline or completely out of the club. So for me, it always comes down to what's on the pitch, what players you have, and how solid you are all around the park. And that's why I just think all this manager talk and all this perception thing, I think if people look at it properly, I think managers' coverage is just way overblown. It just doesn't need to be this. I think managers' influence on results is not minimal, but I guess in itself the art is being perceived well. So, but I think in terms of what actually happens on the pitch, their influence, I think, is overblown. That's how I'll say.
Probably one way to look at it. I have 2 questions though to sort of wrap up this little topic. Since we sort of talked about, Chelsea and also Tottenham and whatnot. Now, first of all, who do you think was a better equipped manager to actually guide Chelsea through against Real Madrid? Like, do you trust Potter more or do you trust Lampard more?
Much of a muchness.
Exactly. So whereas if you look at Bayern, where they appointed Tuchel, it's like, okay, I can see why. Like, I think I'd probably trust Tuchel to guide Bayern through against City more than Nagelsmann.
Yeah.
The other question is, and this was I'm stealing this one from TalkSport. Who do you trust more out of Chelsea, Liverpool, and United? I'll throw Tottenham in there as well since they're part of that big 6. Out of those 4 teams, who do you trust more? Who do you see winning a title first out of those ones? So it can be not next year, or it can be within 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Who do you trust to win the title next?
I actually think Chelsea. Go with Chelsea.
Not
I
United?
think they have not quite United. It was definitely between those two. Liverpool.
I think
I think this is
Liverpool are
worse.
too big of a rebuild, I feel.
Yeah, I feel this is worse than a couple of years ago where we played that weird COVID season and somehow got into the top four. Um, I think this is worse this season. I don't know. I can't see next season going like last season did for Liverpool, but maybe it can because like we keep saying, Fabinho and Virgil are not so old that they have to be terrible. So maybe this is just a dip, and maybe they come back stronger next season. We'll wait and see. If that does happen, then you've got to say Liverpool should be in the mix again. So they're the wild card, definitely Liverpool, but I can't because I'm so exasperated with the team. I can't put. I don't want to put them anywhere near the top of this list. So United is a question of depth. I think the squad depth. I think Chelsea just have that over them. But Chelsea. It's gonna take everything to calm down. Everyone around the top needs to calm down. I don't know, and then it's the big factor of which manager they get in. And I know I've just said how overblown the manager is, but at a club where the fans clearly want it one way and not the other, you're gonna need to get it right to get the fans on side. So that's the big thing. And I guess we talked about it, but there's no shortage of managerial talent out there. So, oh man, yeah, that's a good question, but I think, ooh, I don't know.
I'd say
I like
personnel-wise, it would be Chelsea because they only need pretty much one signing, which is a striker.
you know, yeah, and you know what I like about Chelsea and United? They're solid at the back. Both of them are actually pretty good. Because if you actually look at the defensive records, Chelsea, I think, is still the fourth best defense in the league, which is crazy to think. They're in 11th. So it's very obvious that they just can't score goals. But I actually think Koulibaly's performances in recent weeks have been quite good as well. You think that they're doing this without Thiago Silva. You think of the wing backs they have. Yeah, I like Chelsea's personnel at the back. But I also like United as well. I think when they get Casemiro back. But seeing, especially what Newcastle did to him without Casemiro, what some teams have done to him without Casemiro, they need backup there. They're obviously without Eriksen as well. So I don't know. Maybe, and do you fully trust Rashford to be this good again next season? I don't know. It's a tough one. He is very good. He scores another winner this midweek. What I will say is, I think. Oh no, I guess we'll wrap this up because which team would you go? Who would you go with?
Probably Chelsea because, like I said, they just need to sign a striker. You do have Lukaku coming back, so whoever the next manager is, maybe he can make that work.
But I want to stop you there because the sentence you just made is it makes sense. It's logical, but it doesn't make sense in terms of this because you said Chelsea just need to sign a striker.
Yeah, whereas
Chelsea haven't been able to sign a striker for 20 years.
I know, but well, they've signed strikers, but for some reason there seems to be a curse there.
Yeah.
Whereas United, I feel like you said, squad depth. I feel like they need maybe 4 or 5 signings, maybe not necessarily like first team starting 11 signings, but like maybe like a number 12, a number 13, a number 14, those type of strikers. Because like you said, Casemiro is out, and you saw the difference when they faced Newcastle. What happens if Rashford is out of form? Like what happens if he has his dip? Weghorst, he's alone, so they need a striker as well.
I wouldn't think he'd stay. because they'll definitely need to upgrade them.
No, but I'm saying, like, Veghorst is a loan, so he's leaving.
Yeah.
But even if they do sign him, do you trust him to be like an actual Man United striker? Because he's
exactly no one does.
He's putting in the, like, I think they did it on Monday Night Football, where I think United have the same. I think they have the same or like 2 points less than what they had last season under when Ranić was there. And the stats are very similar in terms of like goals scored and all that stuff. But I think like team goals scored without Ronaldo is like plus 10 or plus 15, something like that. Whereas when Ronaldo plays, then like he makes up for those team goals. So like the goals itself is the same, but then like Ronaldo scores like that difference of 10 to 15 goals when he's not playing. If you get where I'm coming from.
Well, for me, the big difference in United is the defence this season with Lissandro and mostly fit Varane. He's been out a couple of times, and Casemiro obviously.
Yeah, but up front.
Yeah, I'll let you finish.
But up front, they again they're probably in a similar boat to Chelsea, where they need someone up front, and I think they do need another midfielder alongside, not alongside Casemiro, but like there in that to maybe fill the number 8 spot or something like that. Because Eriksen got injured, and since he's out, they've looked worse as well. Not like terribly worse, but they haven't looked as good.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. They probably need 3 or 4 signings.
Yeah, but they're not, like you say. I don't even think the striker one is as major as Chelsea. Chelsea need to get Victor Osimhen, I'd say, to sort of have somewhat insurance that this guy's got to come in and tear it up. Like any other striker, realistic striker, do you really see coming in and being a guarantee for Chelsea?
What about Kane?
Well, that's what I said. Realistic.
Well, yeah, like the only
Harry Kane.
Is that based on because that's another London club, or?
Well, it's going to be based on, unless Chelsea do the miraculous, which they have somewhat previous, because you think of their 2 Champions League winning seasons, and neither of those seasons were they ever really in the bracket of best team in Europe, but they go on to win it. So it depends if they can pull that off and win the Champions League and be in the Champions League next season, then Harry Kane definitely has a reason to move there.
Yeah,
but if Harry Kane's moving, he has to go to Champions League football. Otherwise, what the hell's he doing moving? So yeah, that's why it comes down to that. So that's why I said realistic. And Victor Osimhen would have to have a burning desire. I think he does to play in the Champions League, and I've already said that maybe that Drogba influence on a kid from West Africa might have done that as well. So if they can get him, he's the only guy realistically I think I'd be confident in coming into Chelsea, because if Chelsea go even a little tier below that, we've seen in the past that those strikers just for some reason don't work for Chelsea. So that's the wild card for them. But United, I don't think need that profile of striker. I think maybe. Look, I'm getting close to not putting this guy in the tier below, but Randall Koulibaly, he's so good. He's pushing to get into that top tier of strikers. Honestly, this guy's unbelievable. I think anyone who picked him up would be very lucky. Like I keep saying, I just see it for United. If they could get him, I all of a sudden feel that their ceiling is definitely good enough to challenge next season. They need to be fortunate because, like we say, the squad depth. And then, the midfielder. Does the midfielder need to be starting 11 quality? I would probably say yes.
There or thereabouts.
I want at least the option to go 50-50 split with Eriksen. If not, just be the number 1 over Eriksen and have Eriksen as a backup. I guess that's 2 first-team players there. But I like the defence. But the question I was going to ask...
How would you replace De Gea as well?
You already asked the question.
That's another one.
I was going to ask, do United have a De Gea problem? Because he's good enough to be a headache.
Yeah.
his way of playing doesn't suit modern football, and it's not going to suit Ten Hag.
Yeah,
So
that's the
he's a
problem.
conundrum. He's such a conundrum there.
But
And the
that's
only
actually a really weird
yeah,
one. I'm gonna say it's a really weird one because he was coming up during that time where I guess Spain was focusing on playing out from the back and using your goalkeeper as like a sweeper keeper sort of. And I guess him going through like all the youth teams of Spain. I'm assuming I haven't checked his actual profile. I'm assuming he was good enough to play in the youth teams of Spain, so he went through the system. And yet he's still not that great with his feet. That's the weird one for me. But his actual shot stopping ability is fantastic.
some goalkeepers just aren't great with it, but I don't know. He's been pretty shaky in recent weeks, but Nick Pope, I thought at the start of the season was all of a sudden
his ball playing
decent with his but he's been poor recently. So
yeah.
But even he has to do it, and I think he's maybe dipped off a little bit, makes another mistake this morning, but for the most part, he's been one of the better keepers in Europe, I think, this season. So that's why it's a conundrum, because David De Gea also has been maybe not quite that level, but just a level below. His goalkeeping's still very good. Man. And who do you get is the question as well,
Yeah.
if you are going to upgrade. Because it has to be a clear upgrade, doesn't it? Do you sell out for maybe a couple of seasons of Manuel Neuer? Can you get Manuel Neuer? That might be an interesting one.
That depends how much out of favor he's fallen out with Bayern. Because didn't they fire the goalkeeping coach there and he spoke out? He also went on that skiing trip. I'm assuming it was approved.
No way. I'm sure in his contract he would not have been allowed to do that. And if Bayern approved that, it's madness. But does he still have the ear of the people who make decisions? Because he's such a big player at Bayern, because now Nagelsmann's out.
Yeah.
So it was Nagelsmann who didn't want his mate goalkeeping coach there. Has he sort of won back some power, and is he the goalkeeper going forward? If I was Bayern, I'd look to move on from Neuer. I'd look to a new goalkeeper. And that's not disrespecting Neuer's career, but I think sometimes his level of arrogance is way over the top, and I think that is often the downfall of this Bayern team. So I know he's not in it at the moment. He's still a great goalkeeper, don't get me wrong. But I just think, and for him, I'd hope that he wants a different challenge as well, because I still think he'd probably have 2 or 3 good years of being a top goalkeeper left in him. So United...
Isn't he 35 though?
Yeah, but goalkeepers, I mean, Buffon's still playing at Parma.
Yeah, but he's older than De Gea.
That's why I said, do you sell a part of yourself, a part of your future to go with? Because I think Neuer is a clear upgrade on De Gea, isn't he?
Yeah, and
objectively,
and if he can hold, see, that's the thing. Like, if he can sort of be a placeholder for the next 2 to 3 years until a goalkeeper is, I guess, discovered that they can get, like maybe Mignon gets to out of contract or something. I don't know when his contract ends. So, like, for instance, like, do you then like get him in to then wait until he's in his last year of his contract or whatnot? So maybe that can work.
Anyone who got Mike Mignon, that would be a good one. But yeah, with what I will say of the here and now, and not looking into the future while we're kind of talking about United, is this week kind of, I don't want to say gave me answers, because that would be going against my logic that I applied to top 4 race. But I feel quite confident that it will be Manchester United and Newcastle in some order. I know Tottenham might still have a say, but I think the fact they've still played a game more and they're, 3 points back.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, exactly. But they have the quality to still have a say. But the way it's shaping out, do you believe that we're headed for a race for the top 4? Or do you think it's going to be a procession for Newcastle and United? Because I think those two are quite clearly better than the rest who are chasing.
Yeah, like, I just think because they have that that buffer. So not only do they have a game in hand over Tottenham, they also have 3 points over Tottenham, both of them. It depends on their running.
Morning, well, I was going to say, just before you go into the running, this morning, I feel gave me a lot of answers because United did what they should have done at home against Brentford. Now, Brentford were pretty woeful in this game, I must say. Ivan Toney had a pretty poor game, and Brentford need Ivan Toney. Look, I'm not hanging shit on him but the problem is for Brentford, they need him to be great, and especially in these games, he needs to be awesome for Brentford to have a chance, really, and he wasn't, and they looked a bit lethargic.
I guess you can say he didn't bet on himself. Hey.
But they obviously had a big game against Brighton before that, and it just looked like the squad was wearing thin. But United, they weren't special, they weren't spectacular, but they did what they had to do in the sense of they kept a clean sheet, because I still believe this United defence is one of the best in the leagues. I know they've had some abominations this season, but I keep saying if you take them out and put a normal amount of goals against in those games, then they'd be running at a Arsenal and Manchester City pace defensively. So I still think they're a very good defensive team. I think Newcastle are clearly the best defensive team in the league, and they back up a performance against United that you would have thought would have taken everything out of them, but then they just go and smash West Ham 5-1 at the Olympic Stadium. A lot of that is down to West Ham. They are very soft, and it's no surprise they're in a relegation battle. But yeah, I thought these two games sort of showed me, like, obviously we'd have those question marks about Newcastle. Is the squad deep enough? Can they back it up? Like, they ran like absolute, I don't even know how, they were frenzied against United at home, and then they backed it up and they just made light work of West Ham. It's like, until I see otherwise, I'm just going to have belief in this team, and I keep saying the fact that these two teams are solid defensively is probably the thing that puts them at a different level from anyone else challenging them. I just think this team's solidity enables them to be consistent, and therefore I just think they're at a different level than any other challenger, and I think it'll be more of a procession than a race to this top four.
I'm tempted to lean that way. I already said with Newcastle they're a lock for top four if they beat United, which they did. And then they backed up the result as well.
I hope you're not jinxing it. I'll be so annoyed at you if you jinx it.
Well, look, but like even just look at the way that they're playing. It's sort of like, it's similar to I think the argument that we had with Arsenal at the beginning of the season, where you were saying that, like, if you look at just the way that they're playing, like, and this was back when, like, I'm saying, like, 5 to 10 games in, around that time, like, when people were saying, oh, like, yeah, they should get top four, and now look where they are. But like back then, we were talking about them making, third or fourth, and you were saying, well, the way that they're playing, like, they should be a lock for top four if they continue playing this way. So if Newcastle continue playing this way, then they should, in my eyes, they should be a lock for top four, because it's different. Like, if you contrast that with the way Tottenham are playing, Tottenham feel like they're sort of barely hanging in there when you watch them play, and that's the difference.
I like that point, because I think too long, or it's hard to strike the right balance between projecting what we think might happen and staying in the moment and seeing what is actually happening in our eyes. And I like that you bring up the Newcastle and Arsenal examples, because with those two teams, it's so easy to project forward and say, Arsenal, they're too young to really do this. City are just too experienced. They're a juggernaut. And Newcastle, it's like, well, they're kind of out of nowhere. Eddie Howe, like, who is he? Is the squad really deep enough? Are they going to... But, like, if you remove that and just look at it with your eyes, these are two of the best teams in Europe. So if they can... And that's the key point, and that's why we project. It's if they can maintain that level. But we're at such a deep stage of the season, you've got to think that they have confidence in themselves to maintain that level, and they've struck up enough. They've got enough credit to strike up enough fear in opponents. The games aren't as hard as they would have been otherwise because these teams are so good and so solid. Like I guarantee, I can pretty much guarantee that. And I know West Ham shot themselves in the foot, but when I saw Newcastle go up 2-0 this morning, I'm just thinking there's no way West Ham are getting 2 or 3 goals to take anything from this game. Not against Newcastle. There's absolutely no chance. They're not doing that. So, and I would hesitate to think that the players probably thought that too. They think we're playing against the best defensive team in the league, probably the best physical team in Europe. Honestly, I look at that Newcastle team, the amount they can run, but they're all huge guys, aren't they? Like Dad Bird's out there running like a horse up and down there. Sven Botman's massive, but he's mobile. They just Nick Pope at the back as well, just presence, massive guys. Joel Linton, players like this, Cal Wilson even, they're so physical.
Gamera looks like he's solid as well.
Exactly, and he has that tenacity about him, and he wants to play through anything. It just so they've got so much to admire, Newcastle, and same for Arsenal. And I lean because of how good they are, and maybe because of how poor the competition is. I lean to think that, and I've thought that for a while because of what I've seen with my eyes. But I know that there are still probably going to be a few twists and turns. Maybe I'll put it this way: there still has potential to be twists and turns for both these clubs going forward, just because of trying to strike that balance between projecting storylines and seeing what you see and going with it.
Yeah, I've wanted to mention this for a while. I'm gonna finally say it. Like and since we're still on the top four race, like we can sort of inject the title race into this. But like this Arsenal, I know you didn't play in that team when I played. I think 3 or 4 years ago for Chelsea, and this is Chelsea in Australia for everyone listening. But like basically we like the seniors and the resis won the title, but the seniors won it with like the last 2, 3, 4 years they had like 18, 19-year-olds. I'm not going to be mentioning names, but they had 18, 19-year-olds, like very talented players coming through, and they were always like third, second, fourth. Like they were sort of mounting potential challenges. And then once a new manager came in, and once like you got 2 or 3 like sort of senior players into the team, they won the title, and it was like a mixture of youth and experience. I know Arsenal is probably more on the youthful side, but now they've gotten like Trossard in, they've gotten Jorginho in, Xhaka's I guess on that sort of more experienced side rather than youth. But like
Jesus and Zinchenko are the big ones.
Jesus and Zinchenko as well. Like it reminds me very much of that sort of title winning team, that my one. But also like the feeling around the club, because like both resis and seniors won their respective league titles. And if you look at Arsenal women, they're doing very well. I think the under-18s are doing very well. I'm not sure. I think the 21s as well are doing very well. So like there's a very good culture that's not just Arsenal men's seniors that are doing very well, but like the other teams around the club are doing very well in their respective competitions too. Because I think the Arsenal women's team, they just beat Bayern to make it into the semis of the Women's Champions League. So like there's a lot of similarities that I can draw parallels to from a personal experience.
Yeah, and I think in a broader sense, the fact that football is trending in a way where it seems now younger is better. The game is so physical. The game is so much running, so much agility, so much energy. Being able to do it for longer than the opponents, being able to do it, and that screams young person, doesn't it? So I think that the game is trending for more top sides to play in that way. Definitely helps anything with that kind of model, and we got to say, with that kind of with Arsenal, yeah, it is luck. It is a fair degree of luck. I know they went out and got Martinelli, and I guess they would have got Saka at one point. But the fact that you have a Bukayo Saka coming through, he is the main guy. But they recruited well and they built around that timeline with Odegaard and
Did you know United
and
rejected Martinelli? Like he trialed there. I think he trialed there as a 15-year-old or 14-year-old, and I think
sometimes that's the kick up the arse that the players need, or it's just what they need. So I don't know. I'm not surprised that football's littered with stories like that. To be quite honest.
Yeah. But I think also that one. How do you really know that like there are so many talented 14 and 15-year-olds? It's like, well, how do you know that this player will actually
Brazilian
and Brazilian as well? Like, because I think at the time he was playing in like I think the senior team of his club was like in the 4th division of the Brazilian leagues. So like it wasn't even like he was like a Santos Junior or something like that, or a Sao Paulo Junior or something. So which is different. So yeah, I can see why they potentially would have, but at the same time, now when you're saying it, it's like, oh, like United would have been crazy or whatever.
Well, yeah, is it the stories of who is it who rejected Maradona? But yeah, there's stories of people who rejected Maradona. Yeah. It's littered with it, isn't it? But yeah, I think the parallels. I'm super impressed by those two clubs, to be quite honest. And I think the way Newcastle. I just love how physical it is.
Yeah, just with Newcastle,
that they're doing it in this manner. Yeah.
Do you think that there's, like you mentioned, like the physicality, them being able to run more than the opposition team or whatnot? Do you think that there's possibly a chance that the Liverpool syndrome hits them? Like whether if they play in this sort of manner for 2 to 3 years, because these players aren't. It's not like they're 20 years old, 21 years old. They're like, I think they're in their mid-20s, the majority of them. So if they play next 2-3 seasons like this, and if they don't start to rejuvenate the team similar to Liverpool, do you think that a similar thing might happen to them then?
But let's not forget what Liverpool were before the first blip, and then obviously the comeback season last season. They had 4 or 5 years of sustained improvement, and then they were building up to it. So I think Newcastle are at the start of that Liverpool timeline rather than last season, which was honestly, you want to use the documentary reference. That was Liverpool's last dance. That was that group of players' last chance really to be something together, and now it needs to be dismantled or rebuilt or reshaped, and it'll be interesting to see how that's done. Yeah, I think Newcastle have a good chance to be good for a while.
And
to be quite honest,
you know what? Since we're sort of talking, like we'll try and wrap up the top 4 discussion. So Brighton won against Bournemouth as well. That was on Tuesday night. Aston Villa won as well, and no one's talking about Aston Villa at all. And I'm just gonna let me just sort of run through this. So Aston Villa, they've played 29 games, so they've played the same amount of games pretty much as everyone else. They have played 1 game more than Newcastle and United. So with them on 28, Aston Villa on 29, there is currently a 9-point gap between them. So I don't put them for top 4. I might put them for a European spot, but I think it's weird when I'm looking at the table on Google. You know how it like just automatically comes up. They're only 5th has a Europa League spot, apparently, because like on the side it has the coloration, but like wasn't it 5th and 6th that gets it? Because this season
is there any Conference League spot?
It doesn't have it for Conference League, but like 5th is coloured in. That like it gets.
I think that's because they gotta wait to see who wins the FA Cup.
No, but it says Europa League group stage, like as qualification and relegation. It says Europa League group stage as the colour reference. So maybe 6th has to go through like qualifiers. I imagine.
Maybe, but it depends. It depends on who wins the FA Cup first. Because if
Yeah.
a team outside of those positions wins it, then 6 is taken away. But I'm confused as to why there's no Conference League spot.
It just didn't colour it in, I suppose.
Yeah.
But do you think that they could maybe get like what? Because isn't it 3 spot? Isn't it 3 spots though for Europa League? Were there only 2 English teams in the Europa League this season? United and Arsenal. Was there anyone else?
To be honest.
I can't remember if there was anyone else because the FA Cup was won by
I think that's
Chelsea.
it. And then West Ham had the conference,
Liverpool last year.
Conference League.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm not.
So it's 2. So 1 goes to FA Cup winner if they're already in a European.
That's weird though that it's 4 Champions League spots but only 2 Europa League spots.
Yeah, but they're already. I imagine you can only have
a certain number of European places.
You can only have 7. Yeah, European places.
Okay. Well, regardless, depending on who wins the FA Cup, obviously. But do you think that they could maybe get a European spot? Because let's say 6th does get Europa League, because let's say Man United or Man City win the FA Cup, so then 6th gets it. Currently, Brighton are in 6th, so Aston Villa could. I don't know. They got 2 games more than them, but they got 2 points less than them. So I'm not even sure that Aston Villa could get Europa League. They should, by this they should get Conference League. Liverpool too will get Conference League.
I think they're in a bracket with Brighton and Brentford. I think they've played their way.
Brentford have sort of dropped off now. They're equal with Liverpool, and they have 1 more game than Liverpool.
Exactly, but they're still a good side. I thought you could see that on the weekend against Brighton, but like I said, they couldn't back it up at Old Trafford. So squad issues at this stage of the season might plague them. Aston Villa maybe because they're starting to trend up with the new manager not bounce, but they've had Emery for a while, but everyone's on the same page. Everyone's getting that understanding that then they're in a great moment of form. If they can ride that, then that's why I at this stage put them in that bracket with those 3 teams, and their 3 teams will be highly motivated to get European football, compared to obviously Chelsea and Liverpool, who seem to probably Chelsea for sure have thrown their season in the tank in the league, and Liverpool I think are right on that edge of just being like, who cares what happens this year, and we finish where we finish. I honestly am at that point. I probably
would you rather they don't get Conference League?
I don't care either way, because either way you're just going to play a weakened team in that, and that just gives them European experience. So that is what it is. But I would be tempted. I would honestly give Fabinho the rest of the season off. Honestly, I'd just say, go and have a holiday, go and refine yourself. We're not going to get relegated, but man, you can't play like this for the rest of the season. So let's just hope that a break away from everything sort of revitalizes you for next season. I'd borderline give Klopp the rest of the season off, to be quite honest. So, because we know he's going to stay, and if he wants to stay, he'll be there next year. So if that puts him in the best frame of mind, maybe even just to go and observe other trends in football and see where the rebuild needs to be for us to be successful. I honestly don't think it's that bad an idea. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I wouldn't mind giving a few of them.
That's actually an interesting idea, like giving... You know how, like, in a normal job, you get 4 weeks vacation. I know footballers get it, like, at the end of the season, and managers and whatnot. But, like, maybe during the season, give it, like, just like a little 2-week break or something, just to sort of get away, have a look around, refresh. That'd be interesting, like, bringing in that concept into football.
I apologise to the listeners that we're back on Liverpool when we'll try to give Aston Villa credit for putting themselves into the European race. But no, I think it would be, especially in this situation where Liverpool realistically aren't really going for anything. I mean, maybe they could go on a good run and put themselves back in the mix, but at this point, I don't think anyone expects it. They're not getting relegated, and they're not in any cup competitions anymore. So I just think if you are ever going to do this, this would be the time where you could do it. And I think it's. I've always said this. I like when managers go and take some time off and live a more balanced life, one, but also get to observe what's going on in the broader picture and the broader world of football and see where trends are taking us. And that gives them a leg up because they know what they need to start building to be successful for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think any time where managers can get away from the minute details, the micromanagement of the everyday, and just look at the broader picture and widen the horizon, I think it's beneficial for these guys because they know football, they can see it. They just need to be given the opportunity to see it. And it could be a beneficial thing. And honestly, if I was in charge, I'd look at doing it because, like I say, if there's never going to be another situation where a club like that can do that with a manager that they respect like that, I think.
I reckon it's a good idea, actually. I like the initial thought of it is actually pretty decent. Like when the club doesn't have really anything to play for. Yeah, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, if you suggested this, I would be like, no, like you guys can still make top 4. Whereas now it's like, man, Brighton are in a really good spot to make top 4. Like I wouldn't. Okay, so I'd put right now the way that the table is. I'd say Aston Villa are an outside chance. I know you guys can leapfrog them with your game in hand, but form wise, how we talked about like the way Arsenal are playing, the way Newcastle's playing, the projections. So form wise, I think I'd trust Aston Villa more to be an outside chance of making top 4. But Brighton, I think, are right in there because if we're saying Tottenham is in there for top 4, then why isn't Brighton? Because Brighton, if they win their 2 games that they have less than Tottenham, they go above Tottenham by 2 points.
Well, I thought at the conclusion I sort of drew was I'm not putting Tottenham and Brighton right in there, and I put Newcastle and Man United separate. But I think in this case, I think Tottenham will still be reasonably motivated to get Europa League. And then I think it's just 2 of 3. And the more you talk me into it with Villa, the more I think if Villa can just ride this wave, they could get that 7th spot. Because no doubt Brentford will be equally motivated, but I worry. And I worry as well because we haven't heard anything on the Ivan Toney front. But we've got to think that something's going to happen there soon. It's a weird one because there was such a big deal made about it, and now it's just like he's just playing every week. He got picked for England. It's just like, all right, what's happening here, guys? Are we doing this or what? But so you got to worry for them if they lose him for sure. But the squad's already pretty stretched, and yeah, so Villa are definitely in the mix. They'll be more motivated than Chelsea and Liverpool, and if Unai Emery gets them into the Europa League, then that's kind of his home, and that's a good omen for Aston Villa next season because. Sometimes I still can't believe that Aston Villa have a European Cup. It's crazy, but maybe they could add a Europa League as well.
Yeah, under Emery.
Aston Villa, one of the crazy ones. But yeah, I'm alright with that. I think they're a better chance than Liverpool. I'll say, and obviously Chelsea, if I need to mention that.
form wise, they're definitely a better chance. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I would love it. I would love it if Brighton pinch that 4th spot from United. Which United? Well, we know which one. I'm talking about. So Manchester United. That would be great. And just points projection, all that stuff. So if Brighton if they win those games in hand, if they would only be 4 points behind Newcastle and United. If they were to win their 1 game in hand to bring them on equal games played. So, yeah.
Well, good luck, because I would obviously love that as well.
And let me just see. Let me just see if they're playing against either one of them. I think they still need to face. So that they have a game. Okay, so they have a game against Tottenham this weekend. They have a game against Chelsea the following weekend. Then they do have a game against United on May 4th.
Is that not the semi-final?
No, this is the actual league. Yeah, they do have also the semi-final game, but they have a game in the league as well. But they don't have any games against Newcastle.
So it's kind of the Juve situation, isn't it? Except I'm more fearful of Juve coming up.
But they do have some tough games. So they have Tottenham, Chelsea, which they're not. They're tough. They're tough. They have Man City to be played. I don't know. It says it's postponed for now, so I don't know when that's going to be played. They got United as well, and they got Arsenal. So they have 5 of those top 6, 7 teams.
See, you would have been happy to have the 4, but then take out Arsenal and City. You don't want to be playing them because there's no real win unless you actually win the game. But that's very hard against those two.
And that's Arsenal at the Emirates, and but it's City at home.
Yeah, but the other 4 fixtures are opportunities for 6-pointers. But yeah, they need to be. As Sir Alex always said, it's squeaky bum time for them if they want top 4. I don't think they've got enough for top 4, to be quite honest. But I would love it. I know your United hate overtakes.
It's not really.
No, don't explain it. Come on, just leave it there. We know how you feel about United. It's all good.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's wrap up the Premier League by just previewing. At least the big fixture coming up this weekend. I'm not sure if there's any others, or if it's just Arsenal, Liverpool.
That's definitely the blue chipper.
Well, take it away, my friend. I predicted Liverpool to be coming into this game with a win, but they looked terrible against Chelsea. Chelsea should have won that.
Oh, terrible! It was actually nearly the same game as the one at Anfield. To be quite honest.
Yeah. Didn't they draw every single game against each other last year as well? They played 4 times. They drew every single game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the one at Stamford Bridge last year was 2-2. It was a cracker.
Yeah, I remember that.
With the Kovacic goal, the insane volley. But honestly, the problem is I think we already did a lot of the preview to this game last week when we were talking about the storylines, and I gave away a lot of the material then. But just to reiterate, I think this is Arsenal's most important game to date in the Premier League, and B, best chance to go to Anfield and win. And I don't know if I tipped them to win, but this is such an acid test for a team who have been psychologically scarred at this place in previous seasons. I'm not going to say I'm getting all the answers. I'm probably going to say I'm getting more questions because at the moment, like I keep saying, because of what I've seen from Arsenal, I say I have answers to say that they are going to win the league. But if they lose this game in any similar manner to what they've lost this game in the past, then all of a sudden all those questions come flooding back. And with a game against City on the horizon at the Etihad, which all of a sudden gives City a chance to, I think, go above you if they win their game in hand and obviously win the game and you guys lose at Anfield. So that is not a state of mind you want to go into, and it's for that reason I make this the most important game. It's for the game itself, it's for what it means for Arsenal, but it's also for the fact that it's City in 2 weeks or 2 fixtures after that. So, man, what a massive game, but you've got to say, because of what you said and what we said and how bad Liverpool look at the moment, what an opportunity. So I don't know how you're seeing it. Is it trepidation or is it not expectancy, but maybe a little bit of excitement for what could happen?
I don't know how to look at it because like what 3-4 weeks ago we saw Liverpool smash United 7-0, and then like we see moments of them playing really well, like the 20 minutes against Real Madrid.
Both at Anfield.
Yeah, and like
That's the
I
thing.
thought that they looked pretty good against City for the first 15-20 minutes as well. Um, and then like there's moments where like they just seem to like fall apart. And I don't. That's the problem. I don't know what Liverpool we're getting. Whereas like if we were facing them last season, it's like okay, I know exactly what we're gonna get, so I know exactly what we need to do. I guess it's easy to say, for Arteta saying this is what we need to do, regardless of what Liverpool we get. Like we know what our job is, but if we get a shit, like we just need to go 100%, regardless of whether we get a shit Liverpool or an up for the fight Liverpool. I don't know if it helps that I guess you guys, like 2-3 weeks ago again, we thought that you guys probably would have been a good chance to make top four. Now I'm thinking, well, with these recent results, I'm not too sure you're going to get top. I doubt that you're going to get top four at all. Whereas, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, probably could have. So, are Liverpool sort of winding down then because they have nothing to play for?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, and and then add on top of that, you guys have had a rivalry for the past 5-6 seasons with City. So going into this game, are you sort of thinking, well, if we win, we help City. If we lose, we put a dent in City's hopes. I'm not saying it's going to be on purpose. Ivan, Tony, hope you're not listening. But it's probably in the back of their minds where they're like, well, do I really need to give 100%?
No, we had a game I think in the 09-10 season where United and Chelsea were going for the title. Chelsea under Ancelotti. And I think mathematically we could still make top four. I think it was like 3 games left. But we absolutely rolled over against Chelsea because I think the whole place knew that we did not want United to win another one.
Even though you had that rivalry with Chelsea.
I think that might have been the one that United would have won to tie us in terms of First Division / Premier League titles. So it was added motivation. The fact that Mourinho still wasn't at Chelsea also helped because if Mourinho was still there, we probably would have wanted to beat him. But yeah, we absolutely rolled over, and it's interesting because I haven't thought of the storylines on the Liverpool perspective, but I love that you brought them up because we will get answers from Liverpool whether they want to keep fighting for this thing until the end, or like you say, whether it's time to pack up, down tools, whether it's time for Klopp, if he's going to stay, to evaluate some of the edge pieces. Time to give rest to those senior players. And time to say we would rather Arsenal win this title than Manchester City. So, yeah, that's why I say for you guys, what an opportunity. Because you even throw that in, like you say, and it's just a great opportunity for you guys to win. But there's also a chance that we come with fight as well. There is a chance. I don't know which way Liverpool are going to go.
That's the problem.
That's why you say that. But I think in a Football League aspect, I think we're too far away from the end of the season for Liverpool to down tools. So I think there will be something. But in the Football League aspect, what we see is, for the most part, it's moments from Liverpool. So even if you have to sustain a 10-minute spell, that's fine for Arsenal. Because as long as they just hang in it and make sure that 10-minute spell is not absolutely horrific, which, let's be honest, sometimes in the past they've done that. They've let those 10-minute spells be absolute game changers and ruin the game. But if worst comes to worst, they concede 1 goal in a 10-minute spell, then for the most part they should dominate the rest of the match because they're just a better footballing side and Liverpool can't sustain any pressure like they used to. So it's not... From the footballing aspect, I don't know if it'll be the same sort of thing that we saw in seasons gone past at Anfield. But also, Arsenal, if they do come under that pressure, especially early, they need to. Those scars can't show. The scars that they have at Anfield, they can't be on display. They can't. They can't do anything like they've done in recent seasons because that will be so detrimental to my personal belief that they'll win the league. So it's a huge game for that aspect. But I do trust that Arsenal will be better than that this time. And for the footballing aspect, I just think they'll be better than Liverpool. And for everything you've thrown in, I just see Arsenal winning this game, winning it as well. I think.
Well, we, like I said, we know what our job is. So, and that's to get all 3 points. Because if we drop points, then that just opens up the title race. Whereas like we need to just continue closing it because it's in our hands really.
I think if you lose it, it somewhat takes it out of your hands.
To an
Because
extent,
you'd expect City, unless City drop points from here till the time you meet, and City have given me enough confidence in recent weeks that they won't do that. But yeah, unless they do that, it will take it out of your hands. And the fact that you've got to go to the Etihad is a bad one. So you guys better win, or at least not lose. You better not lose.
Yeah, look,
that's for damn sure.
I would take a draw. Considering Liverpool beat City at Anfield, I would take a draw because that means we got 4 points out of a possible 6, whereas City only got 3 points out of a possible 6 with the Liverpool fixture. So that's one thing, and it still sort of keeps that gap. I think it would only be 3 points the gap then.
Yeah, with a draw. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll rephrase what I said from you better not lose to you better not lose badly. If Liverpool come with fight, and Anfield plays its part, and Liverpool play somewhat to their level that they're capable of sometimes, then if you go down because Liverpool played well, but you only go down by a goal and you were fighting the whole way, then there's still enough of the season left where I don't think that's a hammer blow. But the blow to confidence, if you guys can't pass this test to at least that level, for me, it will shift my whole belief in the title race, I've got to say.
Yeah.
So it's a massive game. It's a massive game.
Yeah, it's bigger than what people think, and I'm not sure whether I prefer this Liverpool or whether I prefer last season's Liverpool.
Complacent. Oh, last season.
Because, like I said, at least with last season, you're like, okay, I know exactly what I'm getting, and now it's like I don't like. You just don't know. It's like it's literally like opening up some random, like those sort of party pack boxes of chocolates, and there's always that one shit chocolate in there like that you hate. It's sort of like that now. Whereas like last season, it's like, okay, well, I'm buying whatever chocolate you like. You're buying a Bueno bar. This season, it's like you're buying some random mix. And maybe a Bueno is in there. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's some crappy sort of mint thing or whatever. I don't know.
Good choice. Good choice on the Bueno.
En Bueno.
En Bueno. En Bueno. Or should we preview the other games from the league and then wrap up on something a little bit
from the EPL or around the leagues?
Just around Europe. I didn't think there was anything else we really needed to talk about in the Premier League.
Tottenham Brighton is this weekend.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's a pretty interesting game.
Yeah. I don't have too much thoughts on that. It's an interesting game that could prove our point in regards to that top 4 challenge.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how that one goes. And you got to think maybe coming out of that one, you get your chief challenger for the top 4. Although, like we said, Brighton do have that gauntlet of fixtures, which is, like we also said, an opportunity. But man, it's tough. That's a lot of tough fixtures coming up for Brighton. So with that in mind, you'd think Tottenham are best positioned. We'll see after the weekend. We'll get some answers from there as well. But I think from the Premier League, it's about we'll wait and see with those fixtures. Interesting. Um, in La Liga, I think we only really had Real Madrid Villarreal,
Yeah.
which will be interesting. Well, I'll get to this a
The,
little bit later, but yeah,
the,
go on.
the thing is that league is sort of wrapped up. I know you have that race for
No, it
top for
is.
second
It
place, I
is.
guess, between the two Madrid teams. You did have
And
Real Madrid smash Barcelona 4
yep,
nil at home
and I
in the
think we'll
cup.
talk about that to segue to what we'll do at the end. Um, but I will say this for in terms of top four because, like you say, the title race is finished there. In terms of top four, this could be perfect for Sociedad and Betis. This could be terrible for Sociedad and Betis. That Real Madrid play Villarreal this weekend when they have their Champions League quarterfinal against Chelsea in the midweek after. So you're going to expect some wholesale changes probably from that team, especially after, like you say, what they had to go through going to the new camp and fielding their strongest 11 in a very feisty game this morning. So you're going to expect a lot of changes there, and that could be a great opportunity for Villarreal, who I think already beat Real Madrid this season in the earlier clash. But they have to go away for this one, so that makes it tougher in itself. But if Villarreal win this, then the confidence that can give them and that could propel them on to the rest of the season, then with Sociedad stuttering, with Betis unable to score goals, they're going to fancy themselves to chase down those two and maybe get that fourth spot. And I think quality within the squad would suggest that they have enough to go and do that and be the fourth best team in La Liga this season, which somewhat is down to the inconsistency of the other two. But they've put together a nice run of form recently. I haven't been that impressed until they came through this Sociedad test on the weekend, but that will give them confidence and build them ready for this Real Madrid test. So I think that's, for me, easily the most interesting fixture in La Liga. I think in Syria, it's the latest fixture. It's Lazio against Juve, and with the table being in its purest form, without points deductions, this is the clash between second and third in Serie A. And I don't know. It's I always say this with Juve, but I don't know if I can say I'm excited for this game because Juve are playing. And they played in a quarterfinal of the Coppa Italia against Inter yesterday morning, and they could only draw 1-1 at home when Inter got a last minute penalty that Lukaku actually put something away. But yeah, he did it, and the game finished in absolute, somewhat not disgrace, but stupid scenes at the end. Both sets of players getting involved with each other, a couple of red cards, just typical Italian drama bullshit.
Yeah,
So
I
there'll
heard
be
about
some,
that.
yeah, there'll be some ill feeling for the second leg at the San Siro. You got to think so. That will be spicy. That'll be a spicy one in a couple of weeks' time. Um, but yeah, so Juve go from that challenge where they named pretty much a full team to the challenge on the weekend of trying to overcome the best defense in Syria. Now official with Lazio having a better goals against than Napoli after Napoli got smashed. Um, Very important for Juve to. Well, we'll get answers from this game as well. I can't believe I keep saying this, but there's going to be some answers to be had this weekend because how much Juve are going to want to prioritize trying to get into top four, or how much they will prioritize the Europa League. We'll see with team selection over the next two games
Who do
because
they have in the Europa League?
uh, who do they have in the Europa League? Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on this.
Europa.
You look it up
Yeah.
while I. But yeah, obviously
Sporting.
they've come. Sporting, of
Well,
course.
they would have had
Obviously
Arsenal
they've.
then.
I
Damn,
know.
that would have been a
So,
nice game.
that would have been a good one, exactly. I'm
Damn.
kind of annoyed at you guys for getting knocked out.
Well, if it helps us win the
But
league, I'm not annoyed.
exactly, because that would have been distracting enough for Arsenal. Because like, oh, Juve, we might want to try in this one actually, you know. But yeah, we'll get some answers with Juve and what Allegri, which path Allegri thinks is the best one for Champions League next season. Because especially coming off the back of, like we say, a feisty Coppa Italia tie against Inter, there might be a chance for rest. That would be perfect for Lazio to go on and cement themselves somewhat in the top four because they do have a bit of a cushion now. I think rightly so. And if they can win this game, come through that test, then they'll really not be nailed on for top four, but they'll be close enough just because of that. Like I keep saying, that solidity, what that platform gives you, what that ability to go into games and know we're not going to concede stupid goals today. And if we do, it's only going to be one. We're not going to concede multiple stupid goals in a game, unlike Liverpool, of course, and West Ham this morning. When you go into a game thinking we could concede at any time, what chance do you give yourselves? There's no chance you can be soft. And because I think Lazio are the hardest team out of those teams challenging for the top four, I think they have this warranted cushion. And yeah, I don't know if I hope that they win this game. I kind of like the storyline of Juve going for top four and sort of breathing down people's necks of being this pest. It's like, oh man, we're already challenging with Atalanta, Inter, Roma. We're already Milan. We're already challenging with all these teams. And now we'll just throw Juve, this little pit bull coming up the rear again.
Yeah,
Thought you got rid of us.
Yeah, after you thought you got rid of him.
Yeah, exactly. So I do like that storyline, but I do kind of want to be right that Lazio finish second and be the second best team in Italy. So I'm split on this one, but we'll get a few answers either way. And Ligue 1, we have PSG Nice, only flagging this one because of obviously the wretched form of PSG. Nice, I don't know if they're good enough at the moment to take advantage of that, but if we want a title race and if we want that Lens PSG game next week to mean the world, then we better hope that, well, A, that Lens take care of Strasbourg, but B, that PSG at least drop points. They don't necessarily have to lose, but if they drop points and then Lens can really breathe down their neck and then go into that fixture, then boy howdy, then we have something on there. Which, I mean, no, well, I'll address that point as well a little bit later. But yeah, that's it from Ligue 1, and then the Bundesliga I think has it this weekend in terms of fixtures that mean something, or multiple fixtures that mean something, because we have Bayern up against Freiburg, which is an immediate rematch after Freiburg were able to go to the Allianz and knock Thomas Tuchel's Bayern Munich out of the Pokal in midweek. Last minute goal there, sort of one of those handballs against Musiala, but maybe he should have had his hands tucked in. I don't know what you meant to do, but penalty given nonetheless, converted, and Freiburg, yeah, knock out Bayern on home soil. So immediate rematch. I'm not sure if they're home or away for this one, but I don't know. Freiburg starting to threaten more and more and look more and more like they might just finish in the top four. And we've already addressed that in the storylines, and we'll have egg on our face for calling Freiburg Fraudberg. I stand by it. It's pretty funny. And obviously Bayern need to keep up the good momentum, but I might somewhat...
It's at Fraudberg.
It's at Fraudberg. I don't know. I have to see what happened in the Cup. I know it's the Cup, and maybe Bayern got it out of the way in the Cup so that they can really refocus for this league fixture. But I might come back to eat my words about what I said about Dortmund having no chance of winning this title after what we saw at the Allianz last weekend, because I somewhat forgot that we're still dealing with Bayern Munich. And like I said at the start, with the managers being overblown, the personnel on this pitch still have major frailties. I mean, Upamecano can make a mistake at any time. Matthias de Ligt, I don't think, has been the stabilizing force that I think everyone had hoped. He still looks like a number 2 centre-back, not an out-and-out number 1 who can play with an Upamecano next to him. Jan Sommer hasn't filled me with confidence exactly since he's come in. Joshua Kimmich, I always think, is maybe a little bit lightweight. I maybe want more of a presence in there. I know you've got Goretzka, but he's a bit more box-to-box. So, and there's always Choupo-Moting up front, who missed a few very good chances in this game. So, I don't know. It's still a little bit of a fragile Bayern. And I don't know, if I was thinking more about the Bayern side after that Dortmund game and their ability to lose points at any point, maybe I wouldn't have said with such, or proclaimed with such boldness that Dortmund cannot win the league. Maybe I was getting carried away. We'll see. I won't completely get off that statement yet because I was still a little bit disgusted by what I saw from Dortmund at the Allianz. I must say, it's still in the back of my throat. I can't quite get rid of it.
I don't think we can quite wrap it up just yet. But I think if Dortmund lose to Union, or even draw, and then Bayern win, then I think it's like already the beginning of the end.
And I must say, Dortmund were not good against Leipzig in the Cup this morning. And that's against a Leipzig who have not looked good at all themselves recently. So we wonder if their confidence has taken a hit, and that run of form that we've seen in this calendar year sort of comes to a screeching halt because of the confidence blow that takes. We'll get a lot of answers against Union Berlin, who themselves were beaten by Frankfurt in the Cup. So we have a lot of these fixtures in the Cup, obviously Bayern Freiburg straight away. Kolo Muani had a 15-minute spell in this game where he was just unplayable. He looked unbelievable with his movement, his power, so quick. I don't know, he might be a budget Osman, although he might not be budget for long because I think Frankfurt will value him very highly, I must say. And Frankfurt themselves have Leverkusen this weekend, and again, answers to be had whether Leverkusen can sustain their form, and if they win this game, for me, they're thoroughly in the mix for that fourth place, especially if Bayern go to Freiburg and win, as we probably expect them to do, even though it's away from home. If Bayern can go and do that, throw the cat amongst the pigeons, then if Leverkusen can pick up a point, but on the flip side, if Eintracht can pick it up, maybe they get some confidence back. They definitely have enough talent. I honestly think that Leverkusen and Frankfurt are the third and fourth best teams in terms of quality in Germany, and I don't think both will get in, but I would love to see at least one of those teams get in. So a draw is probably the result I want the least from this game. I probably want a Leverkusen win a bit more than a Frankfurt win, because I would rather see Leverkusen's team stay together than Frankfurt's, because I think Frankfurt, the X factor is Kolo Muani. I think for Leverkusen, you have a few good pieces. I think you have Frimpong. I've liked what Andrich is doing under Xabi Alonso. You have Florian Wirtz back in the team, who has been a massive boost and one of the more highly sought after and regarded younger players in Europe. And you have Moussa Diaby, who I just love, honestly. I think Moussa Diaby is excellent. And if they can reinvigorate Patrick Schick maybe next season as well, then they have a pretty good core there to go on and maybe go on and be the second best team in Germany ahead of Dortmund, especially if Dortmund lose Jude Bellingham. So, I think just for all those reasons, and obviously my boy Xabi Alonso in charge of them. So for those reasons, I just hope probably a little bit more than Frankfurt, but I mean that Leverkusen. But if it is Frankfurt and Randall Colomwani plays well, then I'm not going to be disappointed. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You
got me?
Yeah.
So that's the Bundesliga. I think that's all of Europe. And I guess to use the transition, I'll use the first transition because you mentioned it before. Benzema, hat-trick at the new camp, coming into form. Let's not forget this guy has the Ballon d'Or. And there's a couple of reasons I want to have this discussion. But so like when we talk about the Ballon d'Or for the upcoming season, I think we'll talk about this off air, but we both believe that Leo Messi will win the next upcoming Ballon d'Or, whenever it is, because of what he's done at the World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we could agree on that, because he got man of the match in every single game. Scored 7 goals as well. Almost got the Golden Boot.
Here's my problem with that. He already got commemorated with a golden ball from the World Cup for that. And what he's done for PSG was good at the start of the season and has been bloody woeful after the World Cup.
Yeah, so it's probably in doubt now, would you say?
For us, yeah. I don't know if it's in doubt because it always goes to the best player at the World Cup or the most important player at the World.
The World Cup wasn't in the middle. It was in the middle of the season, not at the end of the
Okay,
season.
now
So
I
it's
was
too far of a
thinking
gap.
did that fall under the Benzema Ballon d'Or, or does it fall up under the upcoming Ballon d'Or? That's the question, I think, and I don't know exactly how that works. But
What do you
if we
mean?
just say,
Because didn't
well,
Benzema get the
if the
Ballon d'Or
world,
before the World Cup?
I thought he did as
I think
well.
he
So
did.
I
He
think the
did.
work exactly. So if we, it's interesting because it's done a little bit differently now, and now there's been so much time elapsed. But traditionally, it's always gone to the player who had the best World Cup, really. So if we go by that logic, we expect Messi to win it. I think that's completely wrong for the reason I already said, because in the history books, we already have the snapshot that Messi was the best player at the World Cup. It's called the Golden Ball. He doesn't need the Ballon d'Or on top of it if he doesn't deserve the Ballon d'Or on top of it. And there's no one in the world can tell me that Leo Messi's club form means that he deserves the Ballon d'Or. So in this instance, I think the upcoming winner of the Ballon d'Or, if it is Messi, means very little to me. So I wanted to come up with something, and I think off air we decided to call it the Club MVP, because we want to commemorate who we think the best player for their club over this whole season has been, if they can't get a Ballon d'Or because Leo Messi's gonna get it. So I think that opens up the discussion, and why we're here is because we'll start on the main man who has the actual award, the Ballon d'Or at the moment. Hat-trick at the Nou Camp. Real Madrid win 4-0 away at Barcelona.
He probably even should have had 4, not 3.
Yeah, I think that
It
ball
was
just crossed the line.
it was just over
I
the
thought he
line.
had 4, but then they gave that one to Vinny. So, man, he's coming into form at the right time, and we've seen how dangerous this guy is when he comes into form at the right time. Although all of last season he was in great form. There's a lot of questions, but I'll start with this question and then we'll work through it. Does Karim Benzema have a chance to be your club MVP, your club most valuable player come the end of the season?
He was injured for the beginning of it. Injured for the World Cup, so he didn't participate at all. But we're talking about Club World Cup. Club MVP. Speaking of the Club World Cup, he did participate in that and he won it. I'm honestly going to put it down to whoever probably wins the Champions League. A player that wins the Champions League, because Real Madrid, unlike last season, they're not going to do the double. I don't think they won the Copa del Rey. So they're not going to win the league. They can still win the Champions League. So, and I guess it depends how much of a talisman Benzema is in the Champions League then.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I don't think that could be the pure criteria. And this is why it's good to talk it out, because now we're starting to get into what criteria we want to apply to this award. But I don't think the best player, and some teams in the Champions League, you might have a debate on who the best player is anyway, but I don't think it can just go to who won the Champions League as the best player.
No, but I think that it's... Considering he won't win the league...
For him to have a chance.
Yeah,
yes.
For him to have a chance, because he won't win the league. And he has had a pretty good season, considering he was injured for, half of it? Almost half of it?
Yeah, I think he's creeping up on Lewandowski in the league in terms of league goals now, and this is back-to-back hat-tricks for him. I know this one doesn't count to his league total, but still amazing form. And if he shows 2/3 of the form that he had in the run into Real winning the Champions League, and they win the Champions League again, and he is their most important player, then yeah, he will at the very least have a very strong case to be considered the MVP of European football for me. But I mean, the counter to that in terms of the overall picture and looking at maybe applying a criteria of you somewhat need to win the Champions League. Because if you look at, I don't know, like an Inter, who still have a chance to win it, I don't think you can argue for anyone from Inter, even if they win the Champions League. Unless someone goes insane, unless Lautaro goes absolutely bonkers. But they've still lost double-digit games in Serie A, and they're in jeopardy of not finishing top four. So it's hard to make an argument for anyone there. Benfica playing in the Portuguese league. Again, someone has to go absolutely bonkers in the next couple of rounds, and they need to win the whole thing, break the curse. It will still be hard to say the best player in Europe has come from Benfica this season. Now, the interesting ones, Chelsea. I don't think Chelsea would have an argument for anyone, even if they won the Champions League. Do you think? Is there anyone there? And we're talking about realistic performances. I know maybe João Felix could go insane and score 10 goals that leads them to... But we don't think that's going to happen, obviously.
See, there's certain players where I'm like, they can sort of dictate games or run games, and they're, I guess, the talisman. Like, for instance, with Chelsea, I'm not just saying this because he's Croatian, but Kovacic, he does have those games where he's like, always on the ball. He's playing passes. He's winning the ball back. And maybe he'd actually have more assists to his name if they had a bloody striker. But seriously, like, just the eye test. When you watch him play for Chelsea in certain games, you're like, damn, this guy is really talented. Like, he's actually dictating things. And same in, for instance, like Real Madrid, you see Benzema dictating things up front, and just in behind him, you see Modric dictating things. But then you contrast that, for instance, with someone like Vinny. You wouldn't say that Vinny is dictating the play of the game or the flow of the game, but he's creating an impact.
Yeah,
with
arguably
with a certain moment or something, if you get me.
And the constant threat as well is creating an impact.
It's a different type of MVP criteria, I'd probably say. But like you said, like with Chelsea, and you can maybe throw Enzo into the mix, but because he was playing very well for Benfica. But I think he's playing a little bit too deep, and he's still getting acclimatized to Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I don't... Because I guess there has to be some level of just who is the best player in Europe. And if anyone ever said Enzo Fernandez or Mateo Kovacic are the best player in Europe, you'd be like, what? No way, come on. Like, they're good at what they do, but they're never in the bracket of they're the best player in the world or the best player in Europe. You know what I'm saying? So there has to be that kind of element to it. They have to have such a big impact and such a profound impact on the game that it's just not a shock. It's not really a shock if someone said that is the best player in Europe.
But see, the problem with that is also, like, generally when you say, the best player in the world or whatever, it's generally, that title is generally going to a forward player. Like, look at the last, even before Ronaldo and Messi had their domination, and I know Modric won it that 1 year, and that, but like even before, and then after that, Benzema, he's a forward player, he's a striker, but even before that, you had Kaká, who was an attacking midfielder, who would chip in with 10, 15 goals a season. Ronaldinho won it as well. I think who was the last one that won it before Ronaldinho? Maybe Zidane or something. Or Cannavaro. Cannavaro won it in
Cannavaro
06 as well.
06.
But again, would you say that Cannavaro was the best player in the world?
Come on, we know my opinion. He wasn't even the most important player in that Italian team.
Exactly.
If you're going to give a Ballon d'Or for the World Cup in 06, it goes to Andrea Pirlo. He was easily the jewel in that Italian crown. It was unbelievable, that World Cup.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, generally, that mantle of the best player in the world is generally going to a striker or a winger, for instance, or an attacking midfielder. Like,
you have to be next level to be a defensive player, a defensive midfielder. The only ones I can think of in all time are Franz Beckenbauer, really? The only guy who played a deeper role, who's I think in that echelon of all time guys. So, but on that point, I think there is a reason why we revere the guys who play up front, because it is the position where, like, the cream rises. The cream rises to the top of the pitch. The best players play closer to the attacking goal because they're more talented and can do things that other players just can't do. So we revere that more. Whereas you can just be a workman-like player. You can be a Dirk Kuyt, you can be a James Milner, and you can be part of really successful teams. But you as a footballer are not very good. So when you get deeper in the pitch, it's more of a role that you play for the team, and you have to be unbelievable at that role to outshine attacking players. And honestly, I know what you're saying in terms of it could be perceived to be unfair, but that's kind of natural selection, really. The talented players play closer to the goal, and thus they get more reverence.
No, but also the hardest thing to do is put the ball in the back of the net.
Exactly.
And you know what? Also, like when you're and like this, for people that watch AFL, when you're defending, and even like football, I guess to an extent, but like AFL, I think more so. Like those defenders, they're not, for instance, trying to mark the ball or like catch the ball in front of the attacking like in front of the attacker. They're generally just trying to like knock it out, knock it to the side or whatnot. They're not trying to take possession. They're trying to stop the attacking player from taking possession.
Yeah. Destroying is harder than building, of course.
No, just it's easier. It's easy. Yeah. So
easier. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So like, I guess in that sense, yeah, like attacking is a lot harder, and that's like you said, to your point, that generally the better players, the ones that can take possession under pressure and actually do something with the ball, they're generally playing in the forward areas of the pitch.
Yeah. So I think now we know, and we must say that there might be exceptions to this, but I don't think. For this season, at this point, we're 2/3 in, and this is very loose what we're doing because we're 2/3 in and we're just starting to think about sort of this award that we kind of want to do at the end of the season. So we're starting to throw out sort of the process, and we're starting to throw out potential names at this point of the season. I think we can probably both agree that we can probably both agree that this season's award will not go to a defender, right? Are we confident enough in saying that?
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone that's been outstanding. Like, for instance, Van Dijk, 1920?
18-19, second in the Ballon d'Or.
Okay, 18-19. Him, for instance, that is probably the level that you'd say, okay, is deserving of like an MVP or whatnot. I don't think there's been any defender at that level this season. So, yeah.
To your point,
I don't think.
Yeah.
Either.
And that was the exact example I was thinking of as well. And to your point, the team needs to play in a quite open and attacking way for a defender to win it, because they need to be asked to be great individual defenders for a defender to win it. And that's when you like sort of see their quality. Whereas, for example, I'll use a Sven Botman from Newcastle. He's a great defender, but he's part of a great defensive system. So it's hard for him to shine in that and shine enough to be an MVP type player. So while very important, while we might need to make an award like the NBA do of defensive
Yeah, we've lost you, Caleb.
Player of the Year, and then he'll be in a shout with that. But he's a name that... Have you got me back?
Yeah, I've got you back now.
You got me?
Yeah, I got you back.
So if we come up with something like that, then maybe he'll be in the shout for that. But yeah, he's a standout name. Kim Min-jae is a standout name, but neither of them, I don't think, can have gone to the required level to be the best player in Europe, the most valuable player in Europe. So, but I will say this: I am not prepared to rule out a goalkeeper to win this award this season.
Who would you have as a goalkeeper?
Marc-Andre ter Stegen. I think he's been the most important player in the defensive unit of the best defense league-wise in Europe. Now, of course, there's the ding of Champions League. Of course, there's the fact he's a goalkeeper.
And ding of Europa League as well.
Ding of Europa League. But let's be honest, and we've said this before, they got extremely hard fixtures in both those competitions.
But still.
But they still failed. Would you put that down to ter Stegen? Probably not.
No.
But at the same time, was he exceptional? Probably not. But he has been exceptional in the league. When you think that, for the most part, he's been without Ronald Araujo, although Ronald Araujo's put together a run of games now, and he's a great defender. And he would be in with a shout for that Defensive Player of the Year as well, I guess, if we did that. But I'm not prepared to rule him out, because Barcelona still have not conceded double-figure goals in La Liga this season, which is just crazy. He's a big part of this new Barcelona identity of being stingy and not giving any goals away. He is the biggest part of it this season. And to reward that, I don't think would be unfair, but definitely the dings of continental performances against, not necessarily him, but against his team, which ultimately comes back to him as well if he wants to win an award like this, I think.
Yeah, and see, here's the other thing, like, how much of a ding are we going to give continental performance? Because, for instance, I'm gonna chuck Arsenal into this. Like, Arsenal, whether they win the league or not, whether they finish first or second, they do also have the ding of continental performance, although probably not as disappointing as Barcelona. But they've probably been one of the best teams this season in all of Europe to definitely to watch, and also performance wise up until this point that we're talking right now. But yeah, they do have that ding of Europa League, but they weren't in the Champions League. So like, depends how heavily you weigh that. That's against
from last season, but
yeah,
you can weigh. It can be a tiebreaker when you're comparing him to a player who is thriving in the Champions League for sure. And also, it's a ding because they didn't perform to expectation in the Europa League.
Yeah,
which is a little disappointing. Although, do we both agree it's Bukayo Saka as the candidate from Arsenal? Or okay,
hang on, I've lost you.
Here's another question. Do we think a club can have multiple do we think that a club can have multiple candidates? That's the question I want to ask.
I think so, yeah.
And if we think of that, who are the clubs that spring to mind? Yeah, I think you were going to.
Yeah, because like, for instance, like what Napoli has Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen.
And I was going to have that discussion.
Yeah. Arsenal, it's a shame about Jesus being injured for 4 months. Because otherwise you probably could put him in the, even though he
needed more goals.
I know that he only had like 5 or 6 goals before he got injured. But even so, like, he was so important to how they played. And he probably would have gotten to double figures, and he still might probably get to double figures.
Honestly, this one might be a bit outside the box. But if Jesus had continued and not got injured, he'd probably be in for a shout for like Defensive Player of the Year because of that pressing. I just think it was that good.
Probably. But like, if you look, who would be the second best player or second most important player or most valuable player for Arsenal? Maybe Partey. But then also contrast that, like, if you've seen Arsenal play without Ødegaard and then play with him, he, especially because while Jesus wasn't there, Ødegaard was leading that press, and he was very instrumental in how the forward players pressed as well, because it looks like he was the one giving instructions. So that's off the ball, but even on the ball, like, you can't deny his qualities. So you can put him in the mix too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. While I agree with your point on Partey's importance to Arsenal, I don't think he's of the caliber for this award. But the other one who is Ødegaard, and I think for the reasons that you just mentioned.
And he's chipping in with goals. I think he's at double figures now.
But the interesting thing, and you were... yeah, exactly. And you were alluding to it. But there's two factors. There's two factors from clubs who might have multiple candidates, like Napoli, like Arsenal, like even maybe Manchester City, who we haven't touched on. But if you have multiple candidates who can be this, the first question is, does that diminish your value, your importance, how important and how valuable you are to your team's wins? because you have a guy playing with you who is also of that caliber? Does that sort of... I'll use a basketball example, the 2011 Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James on the same team. People didn't want to vote for either of them for MVP because they were two of the top 5 players in the league playing in the same team, maybe two of the top 3 players playing in the same team. So it's like, all right, how important are you? Because if you're missing, this other guy's still there and he's still great and he can still carry a team. So that's an interesting question in of itself. I'll let you address that one and then I'll get to the Napoli one.
I think that one's slightly different because you're talking about a much smaller playing area and only 5 players that play, or 10 players max, across both teams. So it's much easier to take over games because there's a small area to cover, and it's much easier to be, I guess, a dominant force. Whereas, like in football, if you're a midfielder, you're relying on the defenders passing the ball to you. Yes, you can go and win it back in your side of the pitch, but there is no chance in hell, especially in today's game, that you will be able to run the ball from your box to the opposition box and score. Whereas in basketball, you can take a defensive rebound and go and dunk it in the other end within 5 seconds.
No. But even I'll push back a little bit because even in basketball, and I get your point, football's completely different. But I think for the reason that we've already somewhat dismissed defensive players from winning this award this season, I know there will be exceptions in seasons to come when, if we see Van Dijk like 18-19 sort of performances. But even in basketball, even for the MVP, the team still needs to be good. And so any player playing in that sort of Kobe Bryant style, I think that's why Kobe Bryant only won 1 MVP, because his team, while he looked great and he was taking all the shots, his team suffered because of that. And his team weren't as good as they could have been until he learned how to be a better team player towards the end. So I think even in this example in football, yes, you'll always rely on teammates. In any team sport, you have to rely on teammates. But we can narrow it because we've sort of excluded defenders, or not excluded them, but we thought they're not up to that caliber of player to win it. Now we're talking about five players playing in a space, and we're talking about Saka and Ødegaard linking up. And is it because they link up so well, or is it because they are good enough, they're the caliber of player to be the most valuable player, the best player in all of Europe? So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that they probably make each other better. That is part of team sport, any team sport, even in basketball. These guys make each other better.
Isn't the same argument for Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia then? Because it's them linking up and they're being a duo. Same as De Bruyne and Haaland as well.
Exactly right. And you know who else I was thinking? I was thinking Rafael Leao and Theo Hernandez. And
yeah.
You know what? If Rafael Leao plays anything like he did at the Maradona, and Milan look like they did at the Maradona, get past Napoli, get into a final, maybe win it, luckily, then I can't label an AC player, probably one of those two out. But I think, so we're picking up on a theme now that a lot of, would you say pretty much all our major contenders come from partnerships?
I'd say so. I don't think there's really individuals, because even if you look at Benzema, you either look at the partnership between him and Vinny or him and Modric.
So then, I think inherently, does it then not become, now we have to limit it to one candidate from each of those clubs to get the right answer? Do we not have to inherently decide who is the more important player, who is the better player out of the two who are in the partnership, and then we have to pick out one, and then we have to pit them against the ones from all of Europe? Have we narrowed the criteria? Because I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm asking you, do you think that's what we've somewhat narrowed the criteria down to?
I think we've sort of narrowed it down, yeah. But
because we don't think
that's the problem though. Like, it's similar to what your argument with Wade and LeBron. Like, if one shines, then the other might suffer sometimes, but you do get games where both shine. But if one has an off day, then the other one can pick up the slack. So yeah, because it's similar to, like, for instance, Benzema and Vinny. If Benzema doesn't score a goal, then most certainly Vinny will, or the other way around. If Vinny doesn't, then Benzema will.
And so I think what's interesting, before we probably open that one up to probably finish the discussion, because this was preliminary and it will develop as the season goes along. What's interesting is we haven't mentioned a single Bayern player. We have, and I think rightly so.
I reckon that goes back to a quote that Miller had. That Mueller, not Miller. But I think he said something like, "You'll never get like a German player winning an individual award, like a Ballon d'Or or something like that, because in Germany we concentrate more on the collective unit." And that I guess that does ring true if you do watch German, like the German national team and then German football teams. Most German football teams, they generally do seem to play more as a collective rather than like have a focal point of one or two players.
I will just counter that by saying, in previous seasons, all the way up until this season in recent times, Bayern have always had a player who would be in this discussion, and that's Robert Lewandowski.
Yeah, I get that.
And if they got Harry Kane would be in this discussion as well, because Harry Kane, the only reason he's not in this discussion is because he plays for Tottenham. So, honestly, and I think
the Tottenham ding.
Like, even if they finish top four, I don't think it's significant enough to win him an MVP for the whole of the European leagues, which is a pity because his play is probably of that caliber.
Actually, you know what could get in the MVP? I think he's like 8 goals behind Haaland right now. So if him getting to like 35, 40 goals and overtaking Haaland for the Golden Boot and leading Tottenham into the top 4, I reckon that could be enough.
That would be fair, because that would be unbelievable
exactly.
if he was able to do that.
And to do that within the remaining 9 games or whatever's left. Yeah, I reckon that would be Benzema last year, because like how many hat tricks did he score? How many like doubles did he score leading up into the final? So yeah.
Yeah. We also don't have in the discussion, and he won't be in the discussion, the player I think we both believe is the best player in the world, and that's Kylian Mbappe. He will not be entering this chat.
Yeah, he gets
because of PSG.
He gets the Messi ding.
Yeah, the Messi and the PSG being terrible, and he wanted to be the leader. So there's no way I could put him in this discussion. So I think now we've narrowed it down. It is all, except for unless you want to throw Ter Stegen in there as somewhat a wild card. It is all partnerships. And now it's I think Haaland versus De Bruyne is easy because of the sheer blindingness of the numbers, isn't it? It's Haaland's your candidate.
But also, I think Haaland has played a lot more games than De Bruyne. Like, coming back from the World Cup, Haaland's played pretty much every single game, whereas De Bruyne hasn't. So I'm not sure if that was more Pep trying to save De Bruyne now for this part of the season, or what the rationale was behind that. But then, yeah, like, you can sort of maybe even say that Haaland's slightly been carrying that team while De Bruyne has been absent.
How concerned are we that it appears that Manchester City aesthetically play nicer football when Erling Haaland isn't in the team? The numbers just outweigh that. I think they do for me, but it's a question. It's the only ding you can have on Erling Haaland. And his team aren't top of the league, and we got to see what happens against Bayern in the Champions League. But I don't know. It's the only ding I have so far of Erling Haaland. I think aesthetically City just look better without him in the team. It's sacrilegious to say, but
the reason behind that is because he doesn't know how to play with his back to goal. And
doesn't.
But and then
as well, wait.
if you
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted. I just
go on.
wanted to add to my point. Like I am dismissing a lot of the start of the season where he and City looked exceptional together, and I can't do that because this is a season-long award. So yeah, I just wanted to check myself there. Sorry, go on.
No, but I was gonna say like yeah, he doesn't know how to. He doesn't yet know how to play with his back to goal at a really high level. He seems a little bit nervous, where playing a more direct style would suit him a lot more, and they were playing a little bit more direct at the beginning of the season. And because he's occupying that space in the middle, whereas last season you had like De Bruyne going through there, De Silva going through there, and like interplaying and everything, you're missing that link through the middle then, with like interchanging players to occupying that space in the middle, and then because you're missing that link in the middle because he doesn't really know how to play with his back to goal that well, then you're forcing the ball out wide. Once he can learn to do that and be that link, which maybe next season he might, then they will be back to more free flowing. I believe anyway.
Does it scare you off giving him the MVP or potential MVP of this season? Does it scare you off doing that, knowing that he still has this glaring weakness in his game that he will probably fix? So if you give it to him this season, you've got to think, if he continues to improve, like who else is winning one of these until Mbappe moves to a relevant club or PSG get their shit together?
Yeah. No, it doesn't scare or concern me. And like you said, like he has this weakness, but he's only 21. So if he was like...
No. That's what I'm saying. That's the scary thing about it.
Yeah.
Because if we give it to him this season when he has that weakness and then he gets better on it, it's just like, oh, well, it's easy. I've got to give it to him again, don't I?
But again, like the personnel are going to change around him because that's a discussion, I guess, maybe for a longer term discussion a longer form discussion that we're going to have. The majority of that City team is aging, so if Haaland is going to stay there up until, I know he signed a 3-year contract, but if he signs an extension, you got to imagine De Bruyne is going to eventually leave within the next 3 seasons, maybe. Would you say? Because he's 31 already, right? So
Yeah.
3-4 seasons maybe.
His productivity will definitely decline.
Yeah,
in that time.
that too. You imagine Bernardo da Silva is going to leave. Grealish will probably stay there. Foden's going to stay there. Mahrez is probably going to leave as well. Walker's going to leave. So a lot of these players are actually going... Gundogan is going to leave as well, you imagine. So a lot of these players are going to leave, and that means that there's going to be a complete rebuild, and most likely a rebuild for and around Haaland.
Yeah. I guess a City rebuild doesn't scare me too much because they get good players. But
who are they going to bring in, though?
I definitely get your point.
That's going to be an interesting talk for another day. Who's going to be brought in so they can continue playing a similar style to what they're playing?
Yeah, because we've already sort of alluded to it, the fact that for a long period of the season, we thought City, not to the level Liverpool did, but they had a lot of the same problems with the rest of the team, and that's why, to bring it back to our MVP discussion, why Haaland probably gets bonus points for carrying a large part of that City team when they were struggling. I think De Bruyne gets somewhat points as well, but he clearly isn't the candidate out of those two. It's got to be Haaland. I think, and I'll maintain for Arsenal, it's Saka for me. I think he has the statistical case as well, being in double figures for assists and goals. I'm pretty sure Odegaard's pretty close to that as well, though.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
When they both have that statistical case, then maybe we've got a different discussion yet again. There's no other Premier League club that have players to that level. I mean, is there a way for Casemiro or Marcus Rashford to enter the chat if they win the Mickey Mouse treble?
If Casemiro didn't get so many red cards.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think the being out for 7 games due to red cards takes you out of it, and he didn't start the season with United. I think that's fair.
But I'd probably give it to Rashford. Yeah, Rashford. Probably,
He is the
yes.
candidate. What do United need to do, given that they're not in the Champions League, for him to at least be in real contention to win it?
If
Is it the whole
see,
treble?
nah, I think if he has a similar sort of talismanic performance in the Europa League and leads them to the Europa League, to what
And top
Benzema had,
four?
yeah, and top four. I think that would be because he sort of. Would you say that he was over the both legs against Barca? Would you say that he was the best player?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Oh,
And
yeah,
he's Man United's only difference maker, really,
yeah,
in
exactly.
the
So
attacking sense.
if he
Yeah.
can have Benzema-like performances in the Europa League, um, he's and they make top four, then he's definitely in with a shout.
I think that's fair.
And he's
Yeah,
he's very
he is.
high up. He's very high up there. Then
He is, especially with the numbers he's putting in this
exactly,
season
yeah.
and the importance of his goals. So,
So I
but I think
I did see someone wrote like the current Rashford is better than any form of Henri.
Come on, calm down, calm down.
I was just like, what are these people like? What bullshit do these people come up with? Jeez.
I won't. I will say
Peak
current
Henri.
Rashford is in the conversation though, but peak Henri was a different.
Peak Henri, like what's he had those gloves on? You knew the game was over.
Peak Henri was probably just a season before I started really consuming a shitload of football. The 03-04 Invincibles, I think, around that time, even maybe a season before that.
Or even
well.
the season before where they lost one on the final day, when they lost to Leeds.
Those couple of seasons.
I think was that the game. I think I remember the highlight, like because I remember I told you on SBS they'll show Monday night highlights or whatever from the EPL. They used to have that on Monday nights, and I think I remember like. I think it was Kuhl scored like this like half volley from like the left hand side of the box. I don't know if you've seen that.
Goal.
Yeah,
like
like
I think I've seen it.
Man, that Leeds team, like with Kuhl and Viduka as well in there.
Yeah, well, they made a Champions League semi-final, didn't they?
Yeah.
Ferdinand was still there. So I think that does it with candidates from England. So I think we know it's Saka at this stage. Erdegaard's still there. I don't think De Bruyne will overtake Haaland as a candidate, and we know it's Rashford from United. Who from Spain? Griezmann missed the start of the season for all intents and purposes, so if it was on the back half alone, he would be up there, but it's not. Ter Stegen, I'm still putting as a fringe, around the fringes. I don't think any other Barcelona player, just because Lewandowski has dropped off post-World Cup so badly, where he's just not scoring anymore. If he continued pre-World Cup form, fair enough.
Yeah, and with Barca, it's a very team-centric performance. Whereas like Barca's from previous seasons, like Messi's getting it, or Iniesta, I guess, you'd say, because they're the talisman. Whereas now it's like I can't really pinpoint a talisman, really.
Yeah, it was Lewandowski at the start, but now it's the defense, so that's why it's the team-centric. Yeah. So Ter Stegen on the fringes, and then Real Madrid. I think we probably both agree that Benzema has the better chance out of him and Vinny, even if we think maybe Vinny's been the more important player to this point of the season. Is that fair in saying?
Yeah, because he's been there the whole season. So, whereas if Benzema played the whole
point, yeah.
But
from this point on, Benzema probably has the highest ceiling, right?
And Benzema's showing what he showed in this stage of the season, like now. It's just such a shame. And you know what? He was at the beginning of the season. He was sort of continuing that form. And then
but that's what you expect from a player of that age with that workload. To be fair, so it's not unsurprising.
Yeah, but I'd say Vinny probably, because he's had to carry that team while Benzema's been out.
Okay, but you're saying Vinny up until this point, right?
Yeah.
But I think projecting forward, I actually think Benzema will have the higher chance of winning it.
Yeah, if he continues playing like this and he leads them to the final, even if he doesn't win the final, but he leads them to the final.
I think it needs to be a win.
Yeah, probably.
Because
Because then you have the argument of like Osimhen or Kvaratskhelia if they make the final and win it.
Well, that's if Napa, and that's been thrown into disarray with Milan going there for me and winning 4-0. So,
Yeah.
like I said, fringes. Maybe we don't think anyone from France or Germany are strong enough candidates. So it really comes down to Napoli and maybe Milan if you want the fringes. Milan need to win the whole competition to have a player really eligible. But if they do win the whole competition, refine themselves, they'll at least be in the discussion. I don't know if it'll be enough from this point to win. Whoever does it, if it's Rafael Leao, if it's Theo Hernandez. If it's Mike Mignon, he's missed too much of the season. So Milan have probably been too inconsistent to this point. They need to be exceptional in the run-in, in the Champions League in particular. But I think now here's the discussion, because I did bring it up on commentary for the Napoli-Milan game that the commentator said that Kvaratskhelia was the MVP of the Italian season to that point. So there's the discussion in itself. Is it Kvaratskhelia or is it Osimhen as the candidate from Napoli?
So there's a similar discussion there with Benzema, because Osimhen was out for like 8 games or something like that. I don't know how many games of the league he missed, but I think he got injured around the same time Benzema got injured. So whereas Kvaratskhelia has been there the whole time, similar to Vinny. So that's a fair point then.
Much better numbers than Vinny as well, so it pretty much eliminates Vinny straight away because Kvaratskhelia, I think Kvaratskhelia is playing in a harder league as well than La Liga, like all round, and the numbers are better. He's already double figures goals and assists.
Yeah.
So are you putting Kvaratskhelia as the candidate to this point?
Probably the leading candidate, yeah.
Yeah, he is the MVP to this point.
I'd say so, yeah.
I like it. You landed at the right club, or not the right club, but the club I agree with. But I still have Victor Osimhen as the MVP to this point because I get the point, and it is the ding that he missed so many games, but he also missed so many games and still has so many goals.
Yeah.
I didn't like what I saw. I know Kvaratskhelia was trying against Milan, but man, Milan had so much less to worry about without Victor Osimhen, and Napoli had so much less confidence without Victor Osimhen. And I think for the intangible thing of the fact that I think Osimhen is the guy that Napoli look to more than Kvaratskhelia. Now, no doubt they can look to Kvaratskhelia as well, but Osimhen is the leader. He is the emotional leader of that team. He is the guy who makes those Napoli players stand 6 feet, 7 feet tall. For me, he is the guy they look to, and I think it's the same a little bit with the fans. They love Maradona, of course, but Victor Osimhen sort of has that rapport with the club and with the fans, especially this season. And for that reason, I have him. Not just for that reason, for the reason that Napoli are going to win their first Scudetto in 30-odd years, since the Maradona days. They've made their first Champions League quarterfinal ever in their history, Champions League / European Cup. So right now, I'm even saying that for me, Victor Osimhen is going to take some knocking off that spot. But I am truly terrified for not only Napoli, but I'm truly terrified for Victor Osimhen in particular, if he cannot play one or both of these legs against Milan. Because for all those reasons I just said, for how Napoli looked. And I know there is a chance that they just took their foot off the gas because they've won Serie A, and I know Milan had to go 100% at that game. We have been through that, but I'm still worried about how Napoli looked without that talisman. And for that reason, because he is, for me, the candidate from Napoli, and Napoli are the best team in Europe, I have Victor Osimhen as the MVP to this point of the season. And you have Kvaratskhelia, which is an interesting conversation in itself.
I could chuck... Obviously, Victor Osimhen's probably like a very close second.
Which is crazy to think if you had 1 and 2 from the same club.
Yeah, but yeah, let's see how I guess the season finishes as well. What players ramp it up, where teams finish, what they win, and so on. Because
Yeah.
yeah, if AC Milan, for instance, knock out Napoli at the quarters, do Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen, that's a massive ding then for them.
It's a bit of a ding, but it is.
I reckon it's a
They have
massive
still.
ding.
It's a here's the thing for me. It's a bit of a ding because they, for me, whoever you choose out of those two, have still set the benchmark that needs to be beat. So even if they get knocked out of the Champions League, it will still take Erling Haaland at least scoring enough goals for City to win the Premier League title or the Champions League. It will still take Karim Benzema being exceptional and Real winning the thing, if not at least making the final. It will still take Marcus Rashford to win the Europa League and be a big part of it. So it's for that reason that I think it is a ding, no doubt, and it gives others the opportunity to overtake them. But that's what I'm saying. They still need to be overtaken, whoever you choose out of them, because they will still accomplish winning Serie A for Napoli, which is no mean feat, and they still accomplish getting to the quarterfinals for the first time in the club's history, which I think can't be overlooked. So
Yeah,
they have still set the benchmark.
Yeah, but I just think getting knocked out at the quarters is one stage too soon for this caliber of a team.
Well, it depends. It depends who does what from that point. Because if Bayern go on and win it, do we expect them to have a strong enough candidate to have done enough to overtake it? If Arsenal win the league, then they'll have candidates of themselves. But if City don't win either the Champions League or the league, then does that take Haaland out? It probably does.
Probably does, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. The other things need to go right as well for another player to overtake whoever.
Yeah, I think the team accomplishments weigh in heavily on the individual player, because you like all right, what Russell Westbrook, he's won a couple of league MVPs, but I guess
he won one in 17.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of slightly different, I guess, with NBA, because you do have the playoffs then, after.
But that's not included.
Whereas there's no playoffs here.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's
we've got Champions League, which is kind of playoffs.
Yeah,
it's the closest
similar.
we've got.
Yeah. I guess we just need to see, because but the thing is, the NBA, they don't have like an actual league champion like you do in football. So like if Haaland, for instance, gets to 40 goals in the league alone, but doesn't win the league, that's a massive ding. And I'm not sure I'd give him the MVP, because if you score 40 goals, you should be winning the bloody league.
Yeah, and that's obviously not his own fault, but
I know,
there's some sort of weird thing about it, because like I said, like those individual NBA players who put up 35 a game, but their teams are okay. It's just like, well, what the hell's going on here? Why did that happen? But yeah, just to finish on the Varat, Osimhen, Napoli sort of thing. The only thing I don't want to be lost in this is the fact that Napoli's season, however it finishes from here on, barring them losing Serie A inexplicably, has been a success. Getting to this stage of the Champions League is a success. It's not a failure. It might be seen as a failure because of how good we think they are, but overall, it still is a success. It's still the first time in history of the club, and winning Serie A is a massive success, even if they might stumble a bit from here to the end, just because they've had it wrapped up for so long. So
yeah, it's similar to Bayern. Like generally, they'd have it wrapped up with like 5 or 6 games left, especially when Pep was there. And then you'd see them start to stumble. So it might be a similar sort of case.
Might be. They just better not flirt with it too much in case Juve win that appeal.
Yeah, true. Caleb, I guess there's 9 games left, 9 league games in most leagues. Some leagues there's 8, some leagues there's 10, I think, left to crown a champion. So we'll see. We'll revisit this discussion and maybe even have the award for maybe best goalkeeper, best defender, best midfielder, and best forward, as well as the MVP. So maybe we can add that just so we're not rejecting any positions or players. But yeah.
We'll do that in our teams, obviously.
Yeah, but
we could just have best defensive player, and that could be, like I said, that could be a forward, that could be a midfielder, that could be a defender, a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But it like honors the other side of the game, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll obviously revisit this, and like we've only opened the discussion, and then we'll lock in our candidates at the end of the season.
And we'll probably do manager of the year as well, but we've saturated all the manager talk.
So far,
we'll leave that
who would you give manager of the year so far to? Because Eddie Howe's a very strong contender. Ten Hag to an extent. Arteta as well, obviously.
Spalletti.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depends on who wins what for that one. But honestly,
for instance, Eddie Howe, he isn't going to win anything, but if he gets top 4,
yeah, he'll be in with a shout. To this point, I'll still give it to Pep though, as much as
still give it to Pep.
Well, he's fighting on all 3 fronts. The treble is still very much alive, and while I don't agree with his tactics this season, his management of situations, his psychological management has been outstanding, I think, this season.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what our thoughts are at the end of the season. But anything else to add before we wrap it up?
No, that was fun. It's good to open that can of worms, and we'll see where it takes us at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's good to talk about. Like, it's still football related, but it's not like just like game related. So hypothetical stuff regarding other things. But yeah, cool. We will reconvene next week. Hopefully, Liverpool assists Arsenal in winning the league. But we'll see. Hopefully, fingers crossed. To all our listeners, happy Easter coming up. Yes. I think that's this weekend. Man, the year has flown by so quick. We're already
happy Masters. Happy Masters this weekend, everybody, all the golf lovers.
How are we already one quarter of the way through the year though as well?
Man, don't open up that can of worms.
Anyway, guys, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know who your league MVP is thus far in for this season, and we'll fingers crossed we get some cracking games this weekend. But to everyone listening, thanks for coming, and bye for now.